Hello and welcome to Disasters History. Today we're going to talk about the recent outbreak of tornadoes from May 15th-ish to May 20th, 2025. This late mid-May tornado outbreak that we just had, because there were some major tornadoes with it, and several of them have been controversial in their ratings. So I decided that I'd go through and make this video and talk about the different damages and the damage indicators that gave some of those bigger tornadoes that everyone has been talking about for the last week, that gave them their tornado ratings, and explain the reasoning behind it. So the one we're going to start out with is the St. Louis tornado on Friday, May 16th. It was one of the most talked about, specifically because there was a photograph from the St. Louis Arch showing the tornado as it traveled northeast through North City, St. Louis. If you look directly above me, this is the radar at the time that this particular tornado touched down. So this one ended up being rated an EF3, as you can see right here. EF3. This website that I'm on is the Damage Assessment Toolkit. The National Weather Service uploads the majority of their storm reports and their tornado reports to this website, including what damage indicators they use for a particular tornado. And I say the majority, some of them don't get uploaded. Some offices are better than others, but for the most part, most of the National Weather Service offices will upload their damage indicators to this particular report. Now, it sometimes takes several days to several weeks to actually upload the photos and all of that documentation, simply because sometimes there's a lot of tornadoes. And sometimes there's a lot of damage indicators. So give them some time, but usually when you have a tornado outbreak, you can go to the Damage Assessment Toolkit and look through their damage indicators and look at the photos they've taken of the damage and try and understand, which is what we're going to do today. So if you look at this tornado touched down 2:41 p.m. May 16th, 2025. It touched down just outside of Richmond Heights. If you look at the radar, you can I can draw right in this area right here, right around Richmond Heights. You can see on the velocity scan right here, this is going to be where your tornado first touched down in that general area. It's probably back more in this direction, actually, towards that. But that's the general vicinity. And our first look at this, if you've never looked at the Damage Assessment Toolkit, these little triangles right here, like this one right here, this is an EF0 damage indicator. And if you scroll down on it, there will sometimes be an attachment which shows you the damage. You can see tree has been uprooted. This tree has already been cut open, but you can tell that it's been ripped up out of the ground. Now, each of these triangles are a different color. So this color right here, this greenish, bluish green, is EF0. This green color here is EF1. Up here you have a yellow color, that is an EF2. Over in this direction, where you at? Come on, there we go. Right here, this orange is EF3, and then if you have an EF4 tornado, it is red, and then if you have an EF5 tornado, the damage indicator triangle is a purple color. I'll show you one from Moore, Oklahoma, once we get a little bit further into this. But so we start out with our first damage indicator here of a tree uprooted, 2:41 p.m. At that time, here is what your radar signature look like. You have a little bit of a hook right here, maybe just a ever so slight right in this area. And then you have your velocity right there. You have a little bit of a couplet, right? This is still very much a forming tornado. Then as we move along, we get up to EF1. Now, one of the things that's interesting about the Damage Assessment Toolkit is you can see as a tornado moves along how it gains strength, weakens, gains strength. You can also see where the core of the tornado is. That's generally where your most damage is. Sometimes it's hard to tell if the tornado has gained strength and then weakened and then gained strength, because it is impacting different buildings and different areas. So if it goes through an area that has only trees, it's only going to get a certain level of rating. It may be at a higher level than that as it's traveling through, and there's simply nothing there to actually, do a damage assessment on. So we have our EF1 damage here. This is another tree uprooted. You can see That's not really uprooted. That's more broken, but that's fine. We continue on. We have some more EF1 damage here. This is more trees uprooted. Trunk snapped. We have some more trees uprooted here, and then we get into EF2 damage. This is an electrical. These are broken wood poles. You can see, zoom in, there we go. You can see the wood pole is snapped off here. This is EF2 damage. This is, let's see, wind speed of 118. So just barely in that EF2 range. And I will put up the EF scale here in a few minutes. Let's go a little bit further. Now we're getting into, so it started out in this neighborhood here at a relatively low level strength. Mostly did damage to trees. There's probably a couple shingles blown off here, but it's relatively weak level damage. I don't see much of anything that's actually building compromised until we get across into here. Now we're getting, these are probably also trees. Oh, nope, this is an apartment. Okay, so we have EF2 damage here. We have uplift of roof decking, significant loss of roof covering, greater than 20%. So this means that the roof has been lifted off of this apartment complex. We open our image here, and you can see, yep, roof has been lifted off. Ripped up. You can see the rafters there. You can see it's broken off here. They've tarped it off. You can see some of the debris down here at the bottom. That's pretty good EF2 damage. It's, let's see, 120 makes sense. We move along. Large sections of roof structure removed. Same thing. Roof's been ripped off. Most of it's down here. Probably has been piled up by the homeowner at this point just to get it out of the way. Then we keep moving along. We're still right in that EF2, EF1 range. Let's see. This is 120 as well, so that's solidly in the EF1 range. Or EF2 range, I'm sorry. More roof removed. You can see that this was brick. You can see some of the bricks have toppled off. That's likely simply because the roof and it fell down along with the actual roof falling down. We continued on. Here we get to our EF3. Now, this is most walls collapsed except small interior rooms. So this photo here, you can see in this area, so this building, all of the exterior walls are collapsed. You can see the remains of them. These are interior walls right here. But you can see that all of the exterior walls have fully collapsed all the way down. Now, one of the things that people like to argue about is the difference between EF4 and EF5 damage, and then what EF3 to EF4 damage. Now, this is pretty solidly EF3. Generally, EF4, you have more removal of the actual debris itself. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to drink my coffee while I do this because I'm tired. One of the weird side notes I have is when I started my fire investigation career, it was in St. Louis, and I did a lot of fire investigations in this particular area of St. Louis. Let me update my little map here because I think we're... Let's see, they're going to put this at 244. Let's see how that looks at 244. Let's do 245. Usually on the fives is a little bit better. Okay, so that's pretty accurate, I would say. Let's look at our map real quick. Yeah, I'd say that's probably about accurate. Okay, so we'll get back to my story here in a minute. Looking at the radar, you can definitely see a couplet on radar right there in the middle. That's definitely a tornado on the ground. You can see a very defined hook right here. And if we switch over to correlation coefficient, we have a well-defined debris ball right there. That blue right there, that is debris. So the way the correlation coefficient works is that all of these areas out here, this green, red, orange, all of that. All of this stuff up in this area, all of this is pretty much the same size because up here, this is all rain. There might be a little bit of hail, but this is all rain. And rain is pretty much universally the same size. So this is measuring the size of whatever is in the atmosphere. Raindrops are generally universally the same size. They'll be a little bit different, but pretty much. So they're all going to measure at the same size in this area. It's going to be a universal color. Over here, this pink right here, this is going to be a lot of hail, which you will see a little bit of difference in the actual hail itself, which is why it's a little bit more spread out in color-wise, right? But when you get down here to this blue ball that lines up directly with, you can see when I draw my picture, directly with our little hook echo right there, this is a debris ball, because as the tornado is going through town, it's picking up debris. It's picking up pieces of wood, glass, shingles, cars, tree trunks, tree branches, blah, 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 and launching it into the atmosphere. All of those things are going to be a wildly different size and shape. So it's going to create this blue drop in CC. It's not going to be a universal shape. It's going to be wildly different, which is how you can tell sometimes when a tornado is actually on the ground. When you get this debris ball, it usually indicates that it has started to loft debris up into the atmosphere that is all different shapes and sizes. So at this time, as it's going through this particular area right here, around 2:45, it is on the ground confirmed. Obviously, it's been on the ground for a while. On the ground confirmed, and it is lofting material at a pretty significant rate. So we go ahead and close out of that. Let's close out of that photo. Go ahead and look at our actual debris right here. So we're going to start here on the west end. Well, southwest end around Fountain Park. So we start getting into EF2 range here. Large sections of the roof and structure removed. Most walls remain standing. Oh, that was the picture I already showed you. Let's look at this EF3 damage here. All walls collapsed. That's a really hard picture to see. All of these walls are collapsed. Now, one of the things you have to take into account when doing damage assessment, when the National Weather Service has to take into account when doing damage assessment, is how well was that structure built? And knowing this part of St. Louis, there's a possibility that, number one, this building was incredibly old, and number two, it was not well maintained at all, which is probably partially the reason that this particular building collapsed the way it did. Despite it being a brick structure, it probably is at least part of the reason why it collapsed the way it did. That's good coffee. Thank you to my wife, Caitlin. Anyway, so we've got, in this block, we have an EF3 damage, and then 2 homes over, we have EF2 damage. Why is that? Like, literally, you can see that's our EF3 damage right there. This right here is our EF2 damage. This building collapsed to the ground. This building only lost its upper decking. Why? Well, this could possibly be a subvortex of the actual tornado, because this was a pretty wide tornado. I believe they measured it at, let's see real quick. Let me zoom out. Let's see. Come on. Yeah, 1750. About a mile wide, give or take. So this home could have been hit by a subvortex. It also could have been fire damaged before. Oh, I was going to tell you guys a story about fire investigation. I'll go back to it in a minute. This could have been hit by a subvortex, could have been damaged before the tornado that caused it to collapse, could have been any number of reasons, could have just been poorly built in the first place. Universally, St. Louis buildings are generally built almost exactly the same on blocks. And St. Louis, fun history story, St. Louis created a ton of bricks throughout its history before like 1980 maybe. So a lot of the buildings in St. Louis are built out of brick, specifically because there were a lot of brick factories in St. Louis because they have good clay. So a lot of the bricks around the country also came from St. Louis. So when you ever go to visit St. Louis and you're driving through and you're like, why are all these buildings brick? It's because the bricks were made there and it was very cheap because they didn't have to go very far. Anyway, so could have been hit by a subvortex, could have been damaged already. It's very possible it was damaged already. Also, could have been damaged already. This one was boarded up. That's pre-tornado. That's pre-tornado board up. It also, and I don't think that's smoke damage. I think that's just old. A lot of these buildings are going to be 100 plus years old simply because of where they are. Yeah. Also, this building has no damage. Roof gone, completely collapsed. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say subvortex, but who knows? But it is on the same block. They're literally next door to each other. Across the way, we have a strip mall. Oh, I've looked at this one. Okay, so when you're looking at this, here is your exterior facade, right? Whole front end is collapsed down. These used to be the front of the strip mall. All the way down. It is completely collapsed on this end, which is EF3 damage 100%. You can see the angle at which it is currently sitting, which is a wild, wild thing to look at. You can see how over here on this right-hand corner in this area where the roof has been ripped off and then it collapsed down, but it's still sitting here, and you can see stuff sitting on the shelves back here, untouched. Sometimes it's really interesting to go through and look and see what was damaged and what was not. You can see where it collapsed over here. So that is another interesting thing, because you have EF3 damage here, EF3 damage here, EF2 damage here, and then EF1 damage here. That is that is a finger, but you can see roof's been ripped off in the front portion, but the rest of the building we can see is not too terribly damaged. We've also got EF1 on the opposite side. Broken glass in windows. Oh, you can see. So you got broken glass. Some of the sign was damaged, but other than that, not much else. You can see the twisting of the... Actually, that's really cool. If you look at this, you can see how this has been twisted, and this one's twisted. So they're twisted in a circle. Likely, if they had taken a photo from the other side, you would see it twisted as well. But that's interesting how you can see it twisted that direction and you can see it twisted that direction. That's really interesting damage right there. Anyway, moving on. So we are now moving into a massive area of EF2 damage. And you can see how wide this particular tornado was right here. You have damage here, all the way to damage here. And you can also see on the exteriors where it weakens. On the outside, you can see the actual outside of the tornado. I wonder if this is a tree. Yep, that's a tree. You can see the outside of the tornado here as well. I wonder if this is a tree. Yep, that is also a tree. And then you can see as you move inward how it gets stronger. EF2, EF2. Then in this, you have a nice core right here of EF3 damage. Let's look at this one. Oh, hey, it's the same photo. Okay. So, when I was doing fire investigations, a lot of buildings in St. Louis have this plaster and lath interior. And shockingly, despite the fact that these are thin pieces of wood, this holds up really well to fire, like significantly better than you would expect. It takes a significant amount of time to, number one, make the plaster fall off the wall from heat. Number two, get enough going to actually burn through these lath inside the actual wall. It's really interesting. It doesn't communicate well through walls as you would expect. I would argue that it holds up better than drywall in most cases. I did a lot of fires in Northern City, St. Louis. Sometimes I would show up on a block and every building on the block would be burnt, and I would start at the wrong house because none of them had numbers anymore until I would find something inside that either was mail that had been brought there and then abandoned, or what, to tell me what the actual address was. That happened on more than one occasion. But This is pretty good EF3 damage. Is that no? It's not. Okay, I was gonna say I thought that was fire damage for a second, but it's not. Anyway, moving on. So now we also have some EF3 damage next door. Similar. All walls collapsed. You can see a little bit of it's the same house, actually, from the other side. Interior walls still standing. There's a little bit of damage on this roof over here that you can kind of see from the same thing. Back window's been shattered out. Tree branches have been snapped off up here. You can see those are fresh. It's pretty interesting. But that's pretty good EF3 damage. Let's go over here. Oh, yep. EF3 damage. Everything's still there. Usually when you get to that EF4 level, nothing is left. This is going to be EF3. And part of the reason that the interior walls are also collapsed for this is because the weight of those bricks falling down is going to cause a lot of interior damage as well. As it starts to fall down, it's going to bring down a lot of the interior walls as well. Let's see if this is from the other side. Yeah, you can see the door there. You can see all those bricks. Those bricks are going to cause a lot of damage as they come down. Yeah. Let's see what this last photo is. Same thing. You can see a lot of the wall is still actually intact. Was probably pulled down as the building collapsed. And we have a little bit of EF2 right next door. Almost the whole second story is gone. First story is still relatively intact. Second story is toast. The X on the front, in case you were curious, means it has been searched and there's nobody inside. If there was somebody inside, they would fill out. If there was something inside that somebody needed to know, they would put markers in each of the 4 sections. But nobody was in here, so everybody either made it out or wasn't home. Then we have a little bit of EF3 damage here. Completely collapsed. One wall left standing. Same thing. This is pretty good EF3 damage. Now, let's see what they measured this wind speed at. 152. So that's middle to high end EF3, which makes sense. Brick generally holds up fairly well to wind, but known building conditions of that area of St. Louis is probably going to bring your wind speed down a little bit. I would argue that if you were in any other area of St. Louis that had a brick structure like that, you'd probably get a higher wind speed. This might be pushing that upper end of EF3, maybe low end of EF4, but because of where this is, they're gonna knock down it because of the building construction and the age of these buildings. And then, so that's really our core of EF3 damage is right there in the middle of St. Louis, because as you get past it, you can see it starts to weaken, and you can also see it starts to narrow. We've dropped significantly. Out here, where's my measure? I know they have a measure. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's not working. Come on. Whatever. We are significantly wider here, and then as we get closer to the river, it starts to narrow. As we get to the river, it's even narrower, even more narrow. And as we cross the river, it's very narrow. You see, we have one bit of damage right here, which is probably a tree. Yep. This is probably going to end up being mostly tree. Trunk snapped. Large branches broken. These are going to be probably mostly trees. Trunk snapped. It really weakened as it went across the Mississippi. Tree uprooted. Tree fell onto structure. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Took a little bit of a glancing blow from that tree after it was uprooted. Right there. This is at 259. So let's move our radar over here to 259. We're over here in the Granite City-ish area. Let's see. 259. Let's just do 3 o'clock. As you can see, let's switch to our velocity scan here real quick. As you can see, we're about right here, give or take. This right here is our couplet, and it is significantly weaker, right? And if we switch back to our correlation coefficient, debris ball is gone. Means it's dropped most of the debris it was carrying, which makes sense for how weak this tornado is actually putting out damage. So if we go back to, let's say, right here, right before, what time did they got? 2:48? All right, let's go back in time a little bit to 2:48. 2:48. Let's just see where we're at. Yeah, you can see right here. Let's go velocity real quick. All right. So you can see the couplet right there. You can see a little bit of a hook right there. If we switch to our correlation, you can see there's still a little bit of a debris ball right there, but it's starting to lose its actual shape, right? You can see that it's significantly, we're starting to get more universal as rain starts moving back in and there's less debris in the actual ball. And if we move forward, let's move forward like, I don't know, 5 minutes, 2:53. Select. It's dropped again. There's still a little bit, but it's really weakening now. Then, let's see. Our last bit of damage is up here in, what is this? Yeah, just north of Glen Carbon. This is going to be a tree. Oh, loss of roof covering material, 20%. Let's see. They lost the peak. They lost the shingles over the peak. So, we're at, what time are we at with this? 3:06. Let's see. 3:06. In here, we've got a little bit of maybe a little bit of leftover debris up in the atmosphere right there. Switch to velocity. There you go. You can see the couplet is essentially gone. It's gone by 3:06. So, but going back to that, this one's pretty much an easy one. There's no real conversation about if it should be any higher or any lower. It's pretty universal. The only real concern with this one is what the actual damage indicators, if those buildings that were damaged were actually to a standard that could receive that. And I think that if you tried to downgrade any of these, that there'd be a big argument for why. It's still a brick building, still takes a pretty significant wind speed to actually do that kind of damage. So that is the St. Louis tornado on May 16th. The next one I want to move down to is this tornado down here just south of Marion, Illinois. Now, this is one of two violent tornadoes from this particular outbreak. So, violent tornado, there are weak tornadoes, which is EF0, EF1. There are strong tornadoes, which is EF2, EF3. And then there are violent tornadoes, which is EF4, EF5. So, this is one of two violent tornadoes for this particular outbreak. Let me shift my radar down here to Marion. Let's see. What radar do I want to use? That's the one I want. This one was at, let's see. What time did we give this one? 6:15. Okay. Oh, this one was a short. This one wasn't on the ground very long. 6:15 on May 16th. There we go. You know what? I wonder if one of the other radars might work better for this. Let's use Paducah. Okay. So, here we go. So, we have our tornado here. This is our tornado path, right? You can see starts EF0, goes up to EF1, EF3, we have some EF2, EF3 damage. There's an EF4 damage indicator in here. It's kind of covered up. And then we have EF2, green, EF1, then a little bit of EF3, EF2, and then it dissipates, right? So we're going to go ahead and zoom into the EF4 damage because this was one that got talked about significantly. Not because it was in St. Louis, but there were arguments it should have been in EF5. So over here, we start with our EF0. It's going to be trees. Usually, EF0 is usually either roofing material that's been lost or trees. 9 times out of 10. So we move along. We start to gain some strength is the word I want. Here about 620, we have EF3. Let's look at this damage here. Oh, no. Can't look at this damage because it hit a prison. Walls collapsed on prison staff housing. Was not permitted to survey, close, or take photos for prison security. Analysis done via satellite imagery. So, this was at 620. Let's move our radar forward to 620. Whoops. There you go. All right. Woo, too far. All right. You can see our velocity couplet right there. You can see our hook echo right there. Pretty universal. This is actually a decent sized tornado, to be quite honest with you. Let's see if we picked up any debris yet. Just a little bit right in that area. So, moving along, EF3 damage. EF3 damage. Then we have, you can see sometimes on the damage assessment toolkit, I usually hide it because it gets in the way. But you can see the damage polygons as it comes around. So you can see how it's on the exterior of the tornado. You have your EF0, then your EF1, then your EF2, and then your EF3. Oh, excuse me. I'm going to hide my polygons because they get in my way. So we're at EF3 damage. Now we start to enter a neighborhood, right? And this is where our EF4 damage is. There are actually 2 EF4 damage indicators with this particular tornado. One of which is not arguable. One of which is very arguable. And not because it should be higher, but because it should be lower. Before we get into this actual damage, because we have EF4 damage on one particular house, and then EF4 damage we'll look at back here, and I'll talk about in a minute. We're going to move our radar up to a little bit further. So we're going to go with this damage indicator right here. So 6:24 p.m. Let's move to 6:20. Let's just do 6:25. There you go. Now, we're going to look at the velocity here real quick. This couplet does not look that strong. Going to be real honest with you. That's not screaming massive, strong tornado. This hook, on the other hand, is very well defined. So you can see right there. You can see the hook right there. Right there. You can see there's a couplet. Whoops. Right there. It's right there. Right? Seen much better. However, you've already saw a little glimpse of this. That puppy right there is quite the debris ball, right? So let's just move forward, backward. Let's go backwards a minute. Let's go back to 6:23. Let's look at our, you know what? Let's look at the storm relative. Now that's a pretty good one right there. And we'll go forward to 6:25. So it's a little bit better. So to give you an idea, velocity is just straight speed. That includes forward speed of the actual storm itself. Relative velocity is just straight speed subtracting the velocity of the actual storm moving forward. So you have to think, as your tornado moves, the green is moving towards the radar, red is moving away from the radar. The radar is down this direction. So this red is going this direction, wind is going this direction here. Going green is going this direction towards the radar, towards, away, right? So in a tornado is where those two meet and they kind of twirl around, right? with the velocity, this one, this is with the storm moving this direction, right? Because this was almost moving due east. With the storm relative velocity, it's just what's going on here minus however fast the storm is moving this direction. So we look at our debris ball. That's a significant debris ball. Where did my reflectivity's having a moment? Anyway, so that's what we're looking at right now. As soon as my reflectivity comes back, let's look at this damage here. So this home that's easily EF3 damage. All of the exterior walls are collapsed. The interior walls are still there, but not swept clean. Also, there's a wicker basket still sitting here and a binder on the ground. It's fascinating what tornadoes do and what they don't do. This is gone. You can see there's a car in the background there. And these might have been stacked by the homeowners before the tornado or the photo was taken. You can also see a little bit of a twist there, which is fun. But you can see interior walls still there. Exterior walls are gone. Let's look at a different damage photo from this one. Is that a Christmas tree? That is a Christmas tree. That's a Christmas tree with tinsel on it. It's not tinsel, it's garland. Haha, I know the difference. Anyway, interior walls still there. Same thing, right? Let's look at this house across the street. Now, the roof is there. Much of this is gone. This has been pushed out, and I'm guessing on the backside of this is more damage. They didn't actually take a picture of the backside of this. We'll look at this home right here. They didn't take a picture of this one. About this one. Yep. Also EF3. You can see the backside of this home was ripped off. You can see part of the walls collapsed here. Part of the roof is missing. Left the trailer though. Let's look at this home right here. Same thing. Roof's been removed. At least portions of it. Roof's been removed. Oh, looks like it collapsed a garage. You can see. That's a freestanding garage right there. It's been collapsed. Then over here we have EF2 damage just down the street. Mostly the roof is gone. We've got a little bit of collapse of exterior walls right here. This might be a little bit low. Let's see what they gave the wind speed here. 130? Okay. That's high-end EF2. Let's see what they gave. What wind speed did they give this to right here? 136. That is the EF3 rating. Like, that is exactly EF3. EF2 is 135. Max is 135. EF3 start is 136. What did this one get? 165. So that is the max EF3. Yeah, this is this one. All walls collapsed, but the slab was not swept clean. The exterior wall was nailed to the foundation versus bolted, which added to the speed. Which decreased the speed, I should say. So, we're going to look at our EF4 damage now. So this is the one of two EF4 damage indicators on this particular tornado in Marion, Illinois. It got a 190 wind speed. Destruction of engineered and or well-constructed residence, slab swept clean. Now, we're going to look at this damage, and then I'm going to tell you what they said about it. So, this slab is swept clean. You can see the remains of the home are behind it. It is completely gone. The only thing left is this one stud right here, which appears to be connected to the electrical. This one stud over here, which appears to be connected to maybe a water line, maybe a gas line. It's hard to tell. And then we have our water heater, and I'm assuming that is the furnace right there. But that is definitely the water heater. but the rest of it is back here amongst the trees. You can see, sorry, I keep zooming in and out, but you can see, I can't drag around. It won't let me. I guess I could scroll, but you can see here, these trees have been ripped off and they have been partially debarked, which is indicative of pretty severe winds. And you can see in the background, essentially every tree where this tornado went through has been completely ripped of all of its limbs and limbs and leaves, and has been partially debarked. You can see this tree right here. I wish I could draw on this. You can see this tree right here has been completely stripped of its bark. You can see how shiny that is. It should not look that shiny in the sun. It has been completely debarked. This one as well. Right here standing up, you can see how shiny it is. It's been debarked as well. And these over here, well, I can't drag. It's been partially debarked. That's pretty significant tree damage. But this home completely swept clean. There is no debris. This was not cleaned by the homeowner. We can look at another one. See? Yeah, it's tied to electrical. That actually also might be electrical. I can't. Yeah, I think that's electrical. That's wiring. Nothing left on this slab. There's a reason that this only got EF4 and not EF5. This home was a 2-story home, was only nailed to the foundation. This single toenail right here into the foundation with a little branch around it. This is how they attached all of the walls to the actual foundation itself. This home was not anchor bolted. It was nailed, which is not a well-constructed or engineered home. It is simply there. Now, the fact that it was completely wiped off the slab, completely clean, indicates that there was some serious wind speed at this location. It could have been a subvortex, could have been the tornado strengthened significantly. Based on this background damage to these trees, I'm guessing that the tornado strengthened significantly. You can even see a little bit better of the tree damage from this photo here. You can see how clean that tree branch is right there. All of the bark is gone. That's pretty aggressive wind speed damage. But 2-story home built in 2003, completely swept away with slab cleared and debris scattered into wooded area behind home. Trees behind the home were reduced to stubs. Residents were not home at the time the tornado struck. Analysis by NWS damage surveyors and structural engineering experts showed that everything above the floor diaphragm of the home was removed. The studs were toe-nailed, and there was evidence of partially engineered wood being removed. The extreme tree subbing combined with the typical construction methods of the home support an estimated peak wind speed rating of 190 miles per hour. 190 miles per hour is solidly high-end EF4. So EF5 starts at 201 miles per hour. Many people say EF5 starts at 200 miles per hour. That is inaccurate. EF5 starts at 201 miles per hour and greater. So you could, in theory from NWS, have a 200 mile per hour EF4 tornado, which I believe there have been. I can't think of any off the top of my head currently, but there have been at least one. Recently, actually. Maybe the DS tornado? If you know in the comments, let me know. It's not coming to me at the moment, but I know there was one recently. I also think maybe Greenfield, Iowa was also a 200 mile an hour EF4 tornado, which angered a lot of people. Anyway, back to this. So this is our EF4. Now this EF4 damage indicator is the trees behind the home. And what we're going to do here real quick is we're going to show you the EF scale and the damage indicators for the EF scale. So I'm going to pull it up real quick because one of the things for the EF scale is that they do not go above a certain amount for that. I believe that was hardwood trees, correct? Let's see. Hardwood trees. So if you take your absolute maximum for the trees. The highest you could get is an EF4 at 167 miles per hour, technically. And that is only if you take the absolute maximum. EF4 starts at 166. So they assigned a 166 to this tree damage behind the home. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that. We've seen significantly worse tree damage in tornadoes recently even, but that's what they did. I agree with the EF4 damage to this home 100%. This is absolutely not EF5. It is not anchored well. This is EF4, especially with it being a 2-story home. That gives it a greater surface area for the wind to push against to remove it. I completely agree this is EF4. If it were anchor bolted, it very likely could have been EF5 strength at this, but based on the damage to these trees back here, I don't know that I would go with the EF4 rating for the actual trees. I think that might be a little bit high, but it is what it is. I think that maybe they could have dropped this particular damage down from 190. I don't know that necessarily it was needed 190 to do that damage, but that's what they decided. It's still going to be an EF4 regardless. So then after we get past that, it drops down to EF3, EF2. Gets a little bit stronger over here. Whoops. Zoom back in here. All walls completely collapsed. Exterior walls appeared to have been sitting unanchored on concrete foundation. Yep. No anchoring whatsoever. Just kind of sitting there. Yeah, you can see there's no evidence of anchoring whatsoever on any of these walls. There is a DI, damage indicator, words, in here that I found the other night that I want to show you guys. Where is it? Here it is. Single-story home built in 2011, concrete block foundation anchored with a few J-bolts to exterior walls, 3 occupants inside, 2 rode out the tornado in a front loader with the bucket raised to deflect debris. 3rd occupant inside was thrown about 50 yards and suffered lacerations and a fractured cheekbone from flying debris. So in here, I don't remember which photo it is. I think, no, not that one. You can see how the home is gone. Which I'm a little surprised they didn't assign a EF4 to this one. You can see that's the front loader they hid in. Where's the actual photo of the front loader? There is a photo of the front loader. If you've made it this far and you're tired of my chaotic going through these damage photos, I'm sorry, this is fun for me. So you can complain about it in the comments, but I'm likely going to do this again. Where is this photo? Did I just open the same photo twice? Man, this tornado did a number on this home. I'm really shocked this wasn't an EF4 rating, to be quite honest with you. It had to have been because of the anchoring for the home. Come on, man. Nope. You can see there's an anchor bolt that I've been talking about, and it's bent, which is pretty impressive strength, to be honest. There it is. They wrote it out in this front loader together, which is crazy. That is a crazy story. Pick up the front loader, get in the front loader, put the bucket up, and hide. Now, I'm curious. The thing that has me curious about this particular story is that I want to know why 2 people were in this and the other person was inside the house. This was probably a nightmare waiting to happen, and they got lucky. Because being in this and then it flipping over is a bad thing, and it's not unheard of for a tornado to flip one of these over. So picking it up, getting inside of it, and then sitting there and riding out the tornado inside there is wild. To have enough time to go and get in it and hide in there is also wild. I'm curious as to why if it was only two that could fit, if it was like mom and kid and dad was inside, or how that particular situation came about. So if you know the people that lived in this particular home at 5838 Wards Mill Road in Marion, I want to know the story. Please, send me a message somewhere, because I want to know the story behind that particular situation, because that's a wild one. But yeah, anyway, sorry, sidetracked. But that's pretty much why that one got an EF4, was specifically because of that one home and the trees behind it. And they're right. They're 100% right about it. Absolutely. Without fail, they're 100% right about it. We're going to look at our radar. Why is you know what? Let me see if I can get it to load again. Oh, there we go. What time was this? Let's see, 6:25. There we go. That's a pretty sizable tornado right there. That's a pretty good one. This tornado was what? Let's see. 575 yards wide. Quarter mile. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right. On to the next one. Now, I will mention that 5 individuals died in the St. Louis tornado. One guy was killed in his truck when the tree fell on it. One woman was killed when her roof collapsed on her. One woman was killed when the church roof that she was in collapsed on her. One man was killed while he was undergoing chemo in his living room and the house collapsed on him. So that one was bad. No one died in this particular tornado. There were a couple injuries, but no deaths. The next tornado we're going to talk about is in southern Kentucky, and this has been one of major discussion over the last several days. This one is the one in Somerset and London, Kentucky. Let me get my radar updated here to the right spot. Down in Somerset and London. This one was, I believe, at like 11 p.m., if I remember correctly. 10 p.m.? That makes sense. I think it entered London at 11 p.m. Let's see. 10. Yeah, okay. Zoom in here. So this is the tornado at 10 p.m. Let's switch to my velocity scan here. So part of the issue with this particular tornado, and the reason that it has gotten so much attention, is that if you look at all these radar sites here, you can see my screen over. Oh, that's annoying. Well, it's kind of in the middle of a radar hole, right? At this location, we are at 7,000 feet in the air, which is pretty high for, you can't really see that. It's not a good color. Oh, there we go. It's not a good color to show up. Wonder if I can change that. Anyway, not the point. You're scanning at 7,000 feet. So you're not going to get good indications of rotation because you are so high in the atmosphere. And looking at the radars, it's kind of in the middle of 4, right? Because this one isn't any better. This one over here, worse. So your Kentucky Jackson office is going to have the best Doppler situation. And this is, let's see how it looks on Storm. So you've got a couplet, and your hook here has a hole in it, which is called a bounded weak echo region, which indicates that there is a very significant updraft in this area. When you've got that donut look, indicates that there is a pretty strong updraft in this area, right? And you've got, on your relative velocity, you've got a decent couplet. On your regular velocity, it's still a decent couplet. Now, the reason this particular tornado has gotten so much attention is that as this storm was moving into Somerset, if you look at the CC, there is a pretty significant looking debris ball coming out the back, and there's a pretty significant one right there, right? And as it was going into Somerset, it's still as a radar indicated tornado. This tornado warning without the flashing is a radar indicated tornado. And it has been claimed that multiple storm spotters and multiple local law enforcement contacted the NWS Jackson office and said that this was an on-the-ground tornado, that they had observed it. So now it's still in a tornado warning, right? We are still in a tornado warning. So if you're in a tornado warning, you should be seeking shelter regardless of whether it's radar indicated or observed. But as we enter Somerset here, it very clearly is doing significant damage. Like, this is a significant debris ball right here. Lines up perfectly with your hook echo. They did not release this PDS, which is particularly dangerous situation warning, and an observed tornado until after it had exited the south portion of Somerset, which angered many people. Again, still in a tornado warning, so you still should be taking shelter because you are in a tornado warning. But they did not upgrade this to a PDS until after it had exited Somerset. Now, from then on until it got all the way over to... I passed London, didn't I? No, I didn't. Yeah, I did. It's right there. As it got to London, it stayed a PDS, but they never issued a tornado emergency, which also angered mostly storm chasers, to be quite honest with you. But it did not go over well. It still is not going over well. I wanted to look at something real quick before we start. Nope, still nothing. Okay. So, this particular tornado, despite the lack of a track, was rated an EF4 tornado. There are significant amount of damage indicators on here. We have EF2, EF3. You can see significant damage. We have a little bit of collapse of roof, all of that. We've got EF3 here. This is low rise. We have the second story almost essentially collapsed, the entire thing, and first floor walls ripped off. Continues on, goes out of the south portion of Somerset, Kentucky, and continues on through this area, which is going to be mostly tree damage because this is a house. They didn't actually go out and do it. They used shed was dragged counterclockwise over 100 yards to the other side of the house. Let's see. And there's that shed right there. It's on the... This is facing... Let's see. I'm assuming that would be facing west, right? I can't zoom in. Yeah, facing west because there's the red, so north. So that's that. Let's open the other photo. We're going to do this together. I should probably do this live sometime. Oh, there's the shed. So the shed was over here, right there. Now it's over here. You can see the drag mark from where it was dragged in a circle. That's pretty impressive. Now, the thing that is confusing me is this damage indicator. Only the concrete slab remains from what was once a new barn dominium metal framed house, while some debris is tossed all around the property. The main house debris is nowhere to be found. Shed was dragged counterclockwise. So this was given EF2, but they didn't actually go out and do a damage assessment of it. And I'm curious if this was cleaned up by the homeowner or what happened here. Why this is completely gone, unless they just don't think it was particularly well built. I'm curious. I'd be curious to see an actual image. I'm also curious about these vehicles. If this vehicle was parked over here, if these one was parked over here, or if these have been moved as well. This, you can clearly see the drag marks on the ground, which is pretty impressive. And you can see the circle, the half circle, quarter circle. Wow. I know fractions. Quarter circle, which is pretty cool. I mean, it sucks, but that's interesting right there. How you can see the drag. So it never actually lifted off the ground. It was just moved by, let's see, this is facing west, so this would be south. So it was moved as the tornado passed by, because the tornado was moving this way, due east. So as the tornado went through, it dragged it around the backside of the storm. So the first part of the tornado probably weakened it, and then the back end of it picked it up and dragged it along the ground. Anyway, curious about that particular one. That seems like a low estimate of damage there. Let's see what this is. There's no way. I'm guessing this is going to be trees. Yep, trees. Wonder if they just didn't want to go back into these hollers. That's probably it, to be honest. Yeah, they did just... Some of these roads back here are... I went to school in Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, actually. Some of these roads are a little bit difficult to travel, so I kind of don't blame them for doing satellite imagery. But it pretty much retained strength all the way across. What time do you think this tornado? 10:17. These are tree damage. Let's go ahead and move our radar up to 10:17. Doo-doo-doo. Yep, you can see you got a debris ball. You have a hook. Let's do storm relative. Yep, you got a nice little couplet right there. We're approaching South London. So as we move on, this was a narrow-ish tornado. I don't know if they've actually released a width on this one yet. I'd have to look at they posted about it on social media and posted a storm summary, but they haven't actually finished the actual path, because if you read that storm summary, you'll notice that none of these damage indicators are EF4, despite the fact that I said to you that this is an EF4 tornado. It's because all of the EF4 damage has been said that it was in here east of Interstate 75. Don't know exactly what house is here east of Interstate 75, but all of it was said to have been here in this massive hole where there are no damage indicators. Now we know that the tornado continued on through here, but we don't know what the damage indicators for this EF4 are yet. I'm watching this and updating it regularly to see what those damage indicators are going to be, because many people wanted this one to be an EF5 as well. And I am guessing, just based on my knowledge of, London, Kentucky, that not many of these buildings were built to the standards required to receive an EF5 rating. We still have our hook. We still have our velocity scan. We have a slightly less large debris ball in that area right there. So, you can see, particularly dangerous situation, 11 p.m. I'm in the Central Time Zone. That's why it's in a different time. So, everything that I've said wasn't actually an hour later. I was right originally when I said it happened at 11. It was 11 Eastern Time. I'm in the Central Time Zone. Anyway, so that's the London, Kentucky tornado, the Somerset, London, Kentucky tornado. 2 people died in Somerset. 17 died in London, which is also part of the reason that a lot of people have been upset about the fact that it was not issued as a Tor E and it was not issued as a PDS until after it had already gone through Somerset. So that's that one. The other 2 tornadoes that I want to talk about are this one right here and this one. Nope, this one right here. Plevna and Grinnell, Kansas. So we're going to start with Plevna because, let's move my radar. There was a storm chaser, who I am not going to name, that was chasing this tornado and said in a post that he believed it was a EF5 tornado. And people on social media took that as, this is definitely an EF5 tornado. He said it sounded like an EF5 tornado, looked like an EF5 tornado. People took that as it was an EF5 tornado and ran with it on social media. In addition, there was a news article that came out that said that there were maybe 3 structures left standing in town. It was talking about 2 different tornadoes, talking about this Plevna tornado and the Grinnell, Kansas tornado. The sheriff said there were 3 buildings left in town. They were actually talking about Grinnell, but because of what that storm chaser said, that was taken as Plevna. Now, this particular storm chaser said, I'm not the National Weather Service, and numerous times after that said, you have to wait for the actual damage assessment, which is fair. And the damage assessment came back as the Plevna tornado was an EF3. And also, Plevna is not wiped off the face of the map, as has been reported by numerous people on social media. Plevna still very much exists. So we will get to that time and we will talk about that. So let's go ahead and update I believe this was on the 19th. This was on the 19th, 11:36. And this was actually at 11:36 because Plevna is in the Central Time Zone. Just like me on the 19th. 18th. Haha. It is that storm right there. Let's switch to my relative velocity. And that is a good couplet right there. Look at this. This is the storm relative velocity scan. That is quite the velocity couplet. And then you have over here, you've got this, whoops, there we go. You've got your hook echo right here. And we're going to zoom out just a little bit. This storm is a classic supercell storm. Absolutely classic. It's all by itself. It's got that nice hook echo. If we move forward in time here just a little bit, let's go ahead. Let's go 48. There we go. Select. It is, this echo is hooking. It's hooking hard. Look at that velocity couplet. Now this is more or less in the middle of nowhere. There's a little bit of a debris ball, but it's more or less in the middle of nowhere. If we zoom out here and we're going to play this, and you can watch this storm develop as it plays. You ready? It's going to come in down here. You can see it start to form right there. You've got an on-the-ground tornado. You can see that hook. I don't know why my velocity is not playing either, but that's fine. And as we get to this point right here, it is headed directly for Plevna. Now, we're going to pause, and we're going to go forward a little bit more here. We're going to do 56. No, we're going to do 59. There we go. It should be past Plevna at that point. Uh-oh. What is going on with my... Oh, it went back in time. Confusing. There we go. Wild. All right. Now we need to go to 12 a.m. I love when my radar doesn't cooperate. There we go. Select. There we go. Now this storm very clearly started to weaken as it went towards Plevna. You can see here it's not as well defined. It's still a pretty good velocity scan, so it's still clearly on the ground, but it is clearly weakening at this point. We're gonna play it. You can watch this full storm develop. You can see velocity. Tornado comes down. It's headed directly towards Plevna. It starts to fall apart right as it went through the northwest end of Plevna. Now here is about where the photograph was taken of this tornado, where the storm chaser said that it was an EF5. It sounded like an EF5. It looked like an EF5. Was in this general area right here, right where it is at its max peak. But there is nothing in this area. It is empty fields, basically. There's not really anything that it can actually damage in this area. So we're going to look at some of the damage here. Now, touchdown here, EF0 damage. Large branches broken, as per usual, it's trees. And then it almost immediately went straight up to EF3 damage, which is impressive. I don't know if there's actually any pictures with these. Let's see. Oh, this one's a metal building system. So this was more or less a barn. You can see it has twisted this barn all up. These massive beams twisted around each other. Let's look at this next photo. Twisted it, landed it right on the truck. Is that a hay wagon? Might be a hay wagon. Let's see if there's another picture of it. No, you can see there's a truck twisted inside the actual building itself. Lifted right up, twisted all around. That is classic EF3 damage. Let's see what this one is. We're still at EF3 strength. Trees debarked. Trees debarked. Let's see what they have. Oh yeah, look at those trees. Some of these are good and debarked. Look at that one right there. That's good and debarked. I'm guessing the other indicator is, yeah, also trees. So we're holding pretty steady at EF3. What is this? Electrical transmission lines, metal building system. That is a tractor. It is now on its side. This building has been absolutely destroyed. Now, the reason these get EF3 is these are never anchored well. They're also usually wide open. So as soon as something fails, it is wide open on the inside for this tornado to pick it up. And it's just a big, massive surface area. So tornadoes and fires are very similar in that the more surface area you have exposed, the worse your situation is going to be. So with a fire, as the fire spreads, in order for it to continue to burn efficiently and spread, it needs surface area fuel to spread to. So that's why if you set a book on fire while it's closed, it will not burn well, because it's very dense and there's not very much surface area to burn, despite the fact that it's made out of paper, so it should in theory burn well. If you open the pages and you set it on fire, it will burn slightly better. If you can get it so that it's like flipped open and the pages are open, it will burn better because more surface area, it's a thinner fuel. With tornadoes, you have the same general theory. The more surface area that you have available, so if you have Like, for instance, a garage with the garage door open. As that tornado comes along, it's going to put the wind inside that garage, and it's going to have the whole roof and then 3 out of 4 walls, because the garage door is open, 3 out of 4 walls to lift up with that wind to cause that damage. So if you have something like this was clearly a barn, when that initial failure occurs, the wind can get inside, lift it up as one big surface area, and twist it apart and destroy it. So moving on here, we are now at EF2 damage. This is more trees, likely mostly going to be trees. Other damage. Multiple full crude oil tanks removed and tossed in the air for several hundred yards to the northeast. Do they have pictures of these? Because I would like to see them. Nope, they do not. Okay. Pivot, flipped, and separated. Okay, so this is if you drive out in the Midwest, pretty much anywhere in the Midwest, or you fly over the Midwest, you look down and there's big circles in fields. In the middle of that is a pivot irrigation system, and it is the thing that travels around and waters and puts out herbicides for fields around in that big circle. So this is a pivot irrigation system that's been picked up, flipped over, and separated. More trees, probably going to be more trees. All right, we're getting closer to an actual town. More trees. Trees. Metal building system. Let's look at this one. Same thing. Big open barn. As soon as one failure happens, it's going to lift it up and twist it. Combine's still not in usable shape, but it's still in place. It's an interesting photo. Wonder what that was. It's part of a trailer, looks like. Let's see. Oh, this is a house. Let's see what this house looks like. So this is a brick home. I think he's standing on the roof. Anyway, you can see the trees in the background are debarked partially. All of the branches have been ripped off. All of the leaves are gone. This is a well-built home that has had its roof ripped off, and that is some impressive damage. That is a good effort. Ripped the wall right off. Ripped most of the roof off. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that canopy was not there during the tornado. Just going to throw that one out there. So if you see this damage, that likely was not there pre-tornado. I don't know if those are there, though. Those might have been there and just didn't get moved. Interesting. Curious about that one. All right, let's move on. These are going to be trees. Oh, electrical transmission lines. Trees. We're still at EF3. Let's move my radar back just a skosh. Let's go right at midnight. Oh. There we go. So this is the tornado as it's entering Plevna, which is right here. So let's look at Plevna. Now, news reports, storm chasers, people on social media have repeated over and over again that this town no longer exists and there's maybe 3 buildings standing and the rest of the homes were slabbed. And as you can see just from the damage indicators, that is obviously not true. The highest rating that a building received in Plevna was EF2. So let's look at EF2 damage here in Plevna. Exterior walls collapsed. You can see walls drop down. Interior walls are there. It's not even all of the exterior walls. It's just some of the exterior walls. You can see. Now, the interesting part about this is that these walls collapsed and all of this furniture is still in place inside the house. Trees got some good damage, though. Broken glass in doors and windows directly across the street. Is that tree in the house, or is it? I think that's just a weird trick of the camera. Windows are broken out. I think this home is abandoned. Maybe? I don't know. That grass is really mowed. Can't tell. This home right here. This was an earthen home. Was mostly collapsed. The van was tossed pretty far from the actual home itself. Still relatively intact-ish. Will probably end up being a total loss simply because you can't really rebuild it like that. But it's an old earthen home. Don't see many of those around. Don't see many of those around much at all. Then you'll notice that there's almost no damage indicators in the actual town of Plevna because it skirted the edge. Now, it's likely if this tornado had stayed at the strength it was, it probably would have caused some pretty significant damage to Plevna. However, it did not, thankfully. It also missed, which is also good. But it's one of those things where you don't want to jump to conclusions while you're watching the actual tornado versus what happens, what shows up in the light of day. This was a manufactured home. This was a double wide, which is why it looks like this, because they do not hold up well to tornadoes at all. And it just came right apart. Overturning or sliding of entire structure. Oh, you can see it in the background there. It's flipped over. And then it ended up weakening. Come on. There we go. End up making a hard left here, going straight north and weakening. Caused a little bit of EF2 damage right here, electrical transmission lines. And then dissipated. So, was it likely a fairly strong tornado when it was out here in the middle of nothing? Yeah, it probably was. However, once it got into actual Plevna, it was weakened. It also did not level the city of Plevna. The other one that I did see people talking a lot about was the Grinnell tornado. This is the one where the sheriff said that there were maybe 3 buildings left standing in Grinnell. Now, actual Grinnell did get a pretty direct hit from this tornado. It did end up dissipating just north of town. And this one was a fun track. It's almost due north with this little jog and then cut back. But we had, let's see, one... We had one EF3 damage indicator, which is why this tornado ended up being rated an EF3 damage, or EF3 tornado. Let's look at this damage. Let's see. You can see exterior walls are collapsed, interior walls still standing. It picked up and flipped a concrete sidewalk, which is honestly impressive. That's not something you see every day. You can also see, this is a good picture. You can see in the walls the debris as it's flying being punctured into the actual drywall itself. You can see all of the missiles. This is going to be pieces of dirt, sticks, wood, whatever it picked up and is chucking at the walls. I don't know what these would be. I don't really see anything on the ground that matches those kinds of punctures. Probably curious what that actually was, because with drywall you usually get puncturing. You don't get this thick smack. So I'm curious what hit this wall. in multiple locations. Wonder if we can figure out from another picture. What is that? What is that? I don't know. Oh, it's a grill. Yeah, it's a grill. It doesn't help. That's the same photo. Yeah. I'm super curious what that actually was, because that's an interesting damage pattern in that wall right there. Curious if maybe there was something on the side of this house that, like on the inside of the house, that pummeled it and caused that circular pattern. Very curious. That truck rolled a couple times. That car definitely rolled a couple times into town. You can see the direction the wind's moving based on the bend of the fence poles back here. But that's EF3 damage easily. Oh. Is that a cornstalk? That is a cornstalk embedded in the wall. Not through the brick, through the actual insulation. Still a cornstalk embedded in that wall. You can see here, you can see the dirt and debris. It's been pelted against this inside wall. You can see where it's been embedded. It's been embedded in the wall. This is why they tell you to get as low as possible and get underground, because if it does come over your house, you're going to be pelted with this, and it is going to hurt. Yeah. Much more of the same. And then we've got a couple EF2. These are probably trees. Yep, trees snapped. Entire house shifts off foundation. Oh yeah, you can see. So here's the foundation right here. You've got your foundation right there. I didn't want to do that. Go back down. Foundation right there, and the entire house has been moved one direction. Now, it's likely that this house wasn't actually anchored to the ground, so it just was able to slide it. See a bit of siding up in the tree. That's some pretty good debarking right there. But it was able to just pick it up and slide it, since it wasn't actually attached to anything. Yep. Now, this is EF2 damage because it's not attached to anything. It's a freestanding structure that it's not, with the exposure from the building, it's just going to slide right across. Probably was high-end EF2. Let's look at the wind speed real quick. 115? No, actually, not. I stand corrected. Actually, I sit corrected. 2-inch diameter wooden pieces were embedded in the wooden siding of the house. Let's see. Yep, you can see it right there. One right there. Roof has been ripped off. You can see some more embed right there. This house was good and pelted. It's one of those things where you think in your brain, when you're trying to understand a tornado, it looks like it's just wind because it's all black, it's all gray. It doesn't. There you go. That's embedded. That is impaled in that house. You don't really think about things like that when it's coming at you because it's just a big gray blob. And then when it gets at you, all of a sudden you realize that it's full of dirt, it's full of wood, it's full of glass, it's full of all kinds of things that just pelt you as it goes by, because things moving at even, what was this wind speed? 114 miles per hour. Even at this wind speed, that is going to hurt a lot. And if you are unfortunate enough to be standing in the way, it's going to hurt even more. This is a manufactured home. Also, do not stand up well to tornadoes. That's some pretty good tree damage. Oh, wow. You can see the shelter doors have started to be pulled up here. The cellar doors. That's putting forth some effort down there to pull those up. That's a good effort. On the south side, we're pulled up. Oh, and that was directly hit. It came up from this direction. So they took a direct shot directly on their storm cellar doors. That had to be, if they were in there at the time, that had to be terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Like, that's Twister level terrifying. Huh. Interesting. But yeah, Grinnell still also very much exists, and there's more than 3 buildings still standing in the town. It's one of those things where when it's dark, as this one happened at 6:30, so it wasn't terribly dark, but once everybody was able to come out of shelter, likely it was dark enough that, everybody started to panic a bit and didn't know what was destroyed and what wasn't. You kind of get tunnel vision on this whole half of town is destroyed without looking at the rest of the town. Just actually pulled this one up on radar. This one was on the 18th at 6:35 p.m. Actually, let's push it a little bit to like 6:45 p.m. There you go. Velocity. Couple it right there. Right just before it entered Grinnell. Just south of it. Is this at the same time there was that wild one up in Nebraska? There was a tornado one of these nights that was up in Nebraska. I can't remember exactly where. That had a wild radar signature. It looked like a hurricane. But it was, also in the middle of nowhere. So it also spun off a bunch of... This might be it. It spun off a bunch of satellite tornadoes. Let's see. Get sidetracked with Anthony. What is my name? That is... There we go. What just happened? Is this it? I don't think this is it. Let's go a little bit further forward. Doing it again. There we go. Nah, this isn't it. This isn't... Wait. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it is. You see that? That's crazy. Let's go forward a little bit. Let's see if it also puts me on a different day this time again. Nope. It kind of made like a hurricane-like signature on reflectivity. It was an interesting one. Also, that is a massive hail core. The pink is hail. I think I talked about that earlier. But anyway, so that was the last tornado I wanted to talk about with this particular outbreak. It was a decent one. Caused some pretty significant damage in some places that don't usually get tornadoes. Southern Kentucky doesn't get all that many tornadoes. Down in this area usually do, but this area doesn't get all that many usually. But that That EF4 was a pretty good one. And actually hitting a city itself is rare. Not because of any reason. It's just that cities don't take up that much space. So on a basic statistics level, it's going to take more time for a tornado to hit an actual city because they don't have that much area. You got to think about how small St. Louis is compared to the rest of the size of Missouri. There are lots of tornadoes in Missouri, but actually hitting St. Louis itself is rare simply because it's a small area. It's the same thing with all cities. The idea that tornadoes stop or fall apart when they get to cities or are somehow dissuaded from entering cities because of the actual buildings themselves is false. It's just a luck of numbers. Like Omaha has had several major tornadoes go right through the middle of it. There was one 2 years ago that touched down at the airport up here on the north side and went right through downtown. It attempted to touch down in Omaha, and then it finally did right around Carter Lake and went across in this area of the airport. It was an EF3, caused pretty significant damage. And then, of course, there's the one exception that proves the rule is Moore, that gets hit all the time. Moore is not a big town, but it takes shots on a weirdly regular basis. So, I wanted to show you what an EF5 damage looks like on radar. Let's go ahead, or on the damage assessment. So let's go ahead and actually look at Moore. What day was that? Was it the 20th? Oh, you know what? What day was the... May 20th. Look at that. What time? 3 something in the afternoon? Oh boy. 3:30. Let's do 3:40. We're also going to pull up the radar signature because it is crazy. It's going to take a minute to load. Let's go down here to Moore and look at our damage path. All right. This is the 2013 EF5 in Moore, Oklahoma. You can see how wide this tornado was. But let's zoom in here. We have EF5 damage here. You can see the purple. So the thing with a lot of this, if you decide to go on the damage assessment toolkit to look at the 2013 EF5, you are not going to find damage photos of all of these, most of these. You will find them for the EF5 ratings. Swept clean. Now, some of you are going to say, well, that's not swept clean. This is debris from other homes. This home was completely gone. This has been deposited here from all of the other homes in the background also being destroyed. You're going to look next door. No attachments. But then you look at this EF5. The attachments again. Again, debris from other homes. There were so many EF4 indicators in this neighborhood and this neighborhood over here that they simply did not have time to upload all of them. That is exactly what happened. I believe the Plaza Towers has photos. No. Wait. Maybe it's this one. Yeah, this one does. Simply because there were fatalities at the Plaza Towers school. 7 third graders. But if you look at these, like we'll just pick a random one here. My internet is struggling right now. But then you have more EF5 damage here. Now, one of the things that I have seen brought up about this particular tornado is in this particular corner right here. You'll notice that it looped and went back around. Now, the argument I have seen be made about these EF5 indicators is that there weren't actually EF5 indicators. It was just hit twice. So it went through the first time, caused damage, and then when it went back through the second time, it swept the rest of it away. And it's because the buildings across the street were not as damaged. Not saying that I agree with it. I'm just saying I have seen the argument made. It's not a great argument, I would argue, because, well, that's an EF4 indicator. And it stayed at EF4 through here. You can see cars piled on top of each other. But I have seen the argument made that it was at most an EF4 in this area. It was just that much damage because it had been hit twice. Then you've got another EF5 indicator here. Lots of anchor bolts with washers. Some base plates were removed from anchor bolts and bolts bent. You can see, well, it doesn't zoom in very far, but you can see there's some anchor bolts over here. Continues on. Still at EF4 strength. Still at EF4 strength. Still at EF4 strength. There's another EF5 indicator right now, right there. Home had anchor bolts every 4 feet with nuts and washers and straight nail walls, studs. 25% of base plates were removed. Wild. It also maintained that ridiculous strength for a long time. My radar is never going to load before I'm done looking at this. I didn't want the thumbnail. I want that one. That's a compressor. For a second, I thought that was a shop vac. I was like, that feels ironic. And then it dissipated. Oh, wait, you know what? You know what would help? Having my radar in the light spot. Oh, it's still not loading. Let's see if I can help it along here. No, I made it even more mad. Well, maybe next time. So, anyway, that is the tornado outbreak. I realized that this was not very structured, but that's just kind of how my brain works, and figured I'd go through and talk about each one to give you guys an idea of why they got rated the way they were. If you enjoyed this, please let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me in the comments what you want differently. Maybe I should just do one tornado at a time, since I like to talk a lot. So I appreciate you guys for being here. Hope to see you in the future. Hope you guys enjoyed it, because I'm probably going to do it anyway, even if you didn't like it. So yeah, thank you guys very much.